Welcome. We are so glad that you're with us today. Today we are going to pretend that we are in Jerusalem. As you can see, we have lots of people here in Jerusalem. It's kind of busy, kind of loud, but we did maybe forget to clean up. So I forgot to shut this cupboard. So let me shut this. Today we're going to take you on a journey. We're going to take you on a journey of the week before Easter. And specifically, we're going to look at Jesus and what happened in that week before he died on the cross for us. So why don't you come along and enjoy the journey with us?
Welcome to Bethlehem. Today we're going to look at where the Easter story first began.
But it's not in Jerusalem. Yeah, it's in a stable. Check it out.
Pretty old and cobwebby and pretty disgusting.
Very authentic looking. Although it's a bit bright. Maybe it wasn't quite this bright, the one that he was born in. But we know Jesus was born in a stable in Bethlehem. And if you come and have a look inside, got all the bits you might need to see. Here we've got some hay and straw in the manger where the baby was laid. And we know that he got visited by, who you got visited by, Danny?
Oh, you got visited by some angels and some shepherds and some wise men. So it was a pretty special birth.
So right from the start, we get an idea of who this person is because that's what the angels were singing about. They're singing, "Glory to God in the highest." This is someone special that's come. But he didn't stay a baby, did he?
No.
We're over here. Because over here we've got Nazareth. And Nazareth is around a lake, or near a lake called Lake Galilee. And Jesus hung out with a whole lot of fishermen. They were his disciples and people who were his mates together. And he gave them special jobs. And they caught all sorts of fish. I'm sure they looked something like this. But then he did a whole lot of miracles as well. And so one day he's out on the lake and he's out with his disciples. They're on a boat. Maybe wasn't quite this big and didn't have quite so many skulls and crossbones. But it was really windy and it was really rocky and everyone was seasick. And he actually calmed that storm. Told the wind and the waves to stop. And people said, "Who is this man?" And we started to see miracles that Jesus did. Healed people. Did all sorts of different things. I wonder what it must have been like to have known Jesus as a young boy or a young man.
And I wonder what it would have been like to see Jesus perform some of his amazing miracles.
We're now outside the gates of Jerusalem, and St Alfred's is a little bit like the gates of Jerusalem. We've got walls,
And we've got roads out here as well, because there would have been roads around Jerusalem.
yeah,
Like these are a bit blue.
yeah. I reckon these were probably made of big rocks,
Yeah.
and probably much better road made, and not as many potholes.
And there's probably heaps of them. They were everywhere. Those Romans liked building roads.
They did.
But Jesus arrives in Jerusalem. How does he get there?
Was it a elephant?
Helicopter.
No. Elephant. Last week it was an elephant.
Donkey.
Donkey. They came on a donkey.
You've got a donkey. Gives a bit of an idea of what it would be like with Jesus on a donkey. Of course, he was predicted in the Old Testament to arrive in Jerusalem on a donkey, and he told his disciples where they could find one. Sure enough, they could. That's how he arrived.
Yeah. And he came down the streets of into the gates, and the streets were lined with his fans. They were so happy to see him.
And they laid their coats down on the ground in front of him.
And they waved palm leaves.
And they shouted things like, "Hosanna, glory to God in the highest," because I think they knew who they were dealing with.
I know. It was pretty cool because they would have seen Jesus and they would have seen him do miracles and wonderful things that he did.
Yep. And maybe they heard about it if they hadn't seen it. And were curious to see who this guy is as he arrives.
Yeah. I do wonder, what was the crowd thinking as Jesus rode in?
I wonder what they were expecting to happen once he was here.
So when Jesus came to Jerusalem, many things happened. He went to the temple and he flipped the tables and made such a fuss.
And I reckon that would have been pretty epic. I think it would have been pretty epic.
Yeah, it would have. One of the other things that happened when Jesus came to Jerusalem, it was time for Passover. And every year they celebrated Passover by coming together to celebrate God's children coming out of Egypt. So the disciples rented a room for them to have a meal with Jesus. So why don't you come and join in?
Let's go. Come on.
So they went to an upper room and shared a meal together. And they spent time together with Jesus, and they listened to Jesus speak and share with them. Come and join us at our table.
Come and join us.
So while the disciples and Jesus were sharing in a meal together, Jesus encouraged the disciples to wash each other's feet and to share together in that service.
And I think that would have been pretty disgusting, considering they didn't have normal runners like ours, but they had sandals, so dirt could get in really easily.
Yeah, it wouldn't have been very pleasant. But they, at the table, Jesus shared with his disciples that he was going to die and that his body was going to be broken and his blood was going to be spilled.
Yeah, and we can do that at church, and that's how we remember that Jesus died on the cross for us. So we share in communion, and sometimes you might see the minister up the front with one of these glasses, or the crackers, or the bread. And that's how we remember that Christ died for us.
It is. The disciples were very sad with all the things that Jesus talked about the fact that he was going to die. They didn't want him to die, they wanted him to stay. I do wonder what his disciples were feeling when Jesus talked about dying.
And I wonder if they were feeling like anxious or scared, or were they feeling brave? So later that night, Jesus went for a walk into a garden. It was a garden of olives. Now, here at church we don't have any olive trees, so we found these pretty purple bushes that are kind of a little bit like olive trees, but not really. And they don't smell like olive trees. They're pretty smelly.
And while they were there, Jesus came to pray. He came with his disciples, and his disciples actually fell asleep and didn't pray with him, but he kept praying. And he prayed that God would take away what was about to happen. But he also prayed that not my will, God, but yours.
And then while he was praying, some people came along and they didn't like Jesus very much. So they came to arrest him. And so they grabbed their swords and they took him down and took him to prison.
They did. There were all sorts of people there. There were priests and guards. And they threw him into the lockup, into the prison, where I don't think that he would have been treated very well. People would have laughed at him and treated him physically quite badly.
I wonder what it must have felt like for Jesus to be treated so badly.
I wonder what it must have felt like for Jesus to be treated so badly by those he came to save.
So the next day was Friday, and on that Friday, Jesus was taken from the prison. And Jesus was taken from the prison because he had to walk from the city. And he didn't walk like you or I would walk. He had to carry his cross. And it was a long way, and it was hard work.
This is actually quite heavy, and the one that he would have had would be much heavier than this, of course, is much bigger. But it's really quite hard to carry.
And the crowds would have been calling him names and mocking him and not treating him very well. And as he climbed the hill with his cross, and as he was crucified, he was able to look over Jerusalem to the land he had made and to his people. And then he died. And Good Friday is actually really sad.
Yeah, it's not really good in lots of ways. It's a bad day, but there's good things that happen because of it. And there's a lot of good things that happen over a very little word that's terrible, and that word is sin. And sin, of course, is all the stuff that we do that makes God sad or angry or upset. It's breaking God's rules. And we unfortunately all do it, and it separates us from God and cuts us off from him. But when Jesus died on the cross, he was taking all the punishment for all of our sin, all the stuff that we do wrong. So that now, if we are people who believe in Jesus and follow him, when he looks at us, he sees that all that sin has been dealt with and it's gone from us. Jesus has taken it for us, and we can be friends with God again. And that's the good of Good Friday.
Yeah. So it wasn't a fun day, and it wasn't something very nice that happened to Jesus. But Jesus let it happen. He let it happen for you and I, so that we could be friends with Jesus. I wonder what Jesus' loved ones were thinking on that day.
I wonder what Jesus was thinking about when he was up on the cross.
But it's not the end of the story.
It's not the end of the story.
There is so much more, and it's going to get better. Yay! Later on Friday, Jesus' body was taken off the cross and they buried him. In those days, the grave was often like a cave dug into the side of a hill. Lots of people would have been buried in the same grave. Jesus was the first to be placed in his grave, and a large rock was placed over the entrance. Maybe it looked a bit like this. This is not a rock, but it does stop people from getting inside. The authorities had some soldiers placed at the door to make sure that nobody would take Jesus' body out. People were sad because this special person had died. On Sunday, these people were in for a big shock.
Why are you scared? He has risen from the dead. See, these grave pillars, they're empty. Jesus has defeated sin once and for all. And I think that's pretty cool because that means our lives are changed forever.
I wonder if people really believed that that was going to happen.
And I wonder what you guys think about this Easter story.
Well, I hope you really enjoyed our time looking through the Holy Land, looking through the Easter story. If you want to, of course, you can go way back to the start and see the Old Testament and the creation, and you can see how it was all pointing towards this happening in the first place. You can read about Jesus' life and his ministry and his miracles, and you can keep reading and see what happened as the church started up and as it started to build and grow, and a whole lot of letters that are there for us as followers of Jesus to learn from. So I hope you've enjoyed being here with Naomi, with Danny, and with me, Ross. We hope you've enjoyed the wanderings we've had, and maybe we'll put some link for you there so you can have a look at all those wanderings and maybe wonder them and other things for yourselves among your families. Hope you're having a great Easter. Sorry you can't be here, but we've got a congregation. It works. Thanks very much. See you soon.